This story takes place when I was around 16 to 17 years old. I lived with just my dad in a little apartment in a questionable area. It was the type of area that you would not want to be out and about when the sun goes down. Up until a certain time, like 10 to 11 p.m., there would be a cop or two in the area patrolling and making sure that there are no gang-related activities going on. I had a job at a restaurant in the city, which was about a 30-minute car ride and an hour and a half away train ride. The train was a couple of blocks away from my place, and since my dad was always too lazy or hungover to drive me, that was my main form of transportation. I went to work around 3 p.m. I would usually get home around 12 or 1 a.m. This was my schedule 4 days a week, aside from having school. I would see a lot of familiar faces on the train because of this, but we never really made conversation with each other. Until one night, when I got out of work late because some assholes wanted to sit in the restaurant past closing. Thanks to them, I missed my train. The next one wasn't scheduled to arrive for another hour, so having nowhere to go and no money for Lyft or Uber, I sat there waiting. No one was around me, so when this older man showed up, kind of staggering a bit, I assumed he was another drunken hobo in the city just trying to catch a train to sleep in. Something about his face gave me a déjà vu, but I shrugged it off, thinking maybe I've just seen him on the train here and there. He made his way over to me, much to my discomfort, and started up a conversation. He wasn't slurring, but the way he was looking down at me gave me goosebumps. He asked me why I was out there so late and all by myself. I had to reply as to not anger him. I mean, we were alone and he was close enough to pull out a knife or something. Anyway, I told him that I was waiting for the train and he asked which one. Now, the train was color-coded with a strip at the top to indicate whether it goes to the north, south, east, or west areas. I took blue, but I lied and I said I took green. He looked at the schedule above the benches and saw that the green train was coming in 15 minutes, so he said he'd keep me company. For those extremely long 15 minutes, he asked me how long I had been working at so-so restaurant. This made my blood run ice cold. I never told him where I worked. I just looked at him and very timidly answered, "For a year," and he laughed. He said, "Wow, it's already been a whole year, huh?" At this point, my skin was itching out of anxiety, and as soon as the green train came, I knew I had no choice but to take it. I said goodbye to him and thanked him for the chat, hoping that would be the end of it. Nope, he suddenly told me that he took the green train too. So he followed me on and sat in the seat behind me. My mind was racing whether he was going to try and do something to me, like chloroform me or hurt me in some other way. But we rode the train in silence. I was trying to figure out how I was going to lose him. There weren't many people riding that train at that hour, and our car was empty, unfortunately. As the ride went on in menacing silence, I could feel him staring down the back of my head. I waited until we got to a stop where there was another person, and I was so relieved to see a woman sitting there. She wasn't boarding, so I immediately got off the train, and the man followed me as expected. I took a seat on a bench next to hers, close enough for her to see and hear everything going on, hoping that she would catch on. The man noticed that I was sniffling, allergies plus being out there in the cold, and he asked if I was sick. I told him no, but he insisted on giving me these weird pills he had that were supposedly cold medicine. I declined in a louder voice. "Sorry, I don't accept pills from strangers." This prompted the lady to look at us, and I made eye contact with her. She knew now. Now, this went on until a blue train came and the lady got up, giving me a look that told me to get on with her. So without explanation, I did. She waved me over to sit next to her, and when the man tried to follow, she said, "No, you go sit over there," and made him sit a couple of seats across from us. He chose the one where he could face us and stared at me the entire time. I was shaking and about to burst in tears. The woman leaned over and whispered to me that she had a pistol, and I felt safer with her there. We whispered back and forth about what happened, and I told her where I lived and how I was worried that he would follow me home. She told me a friend of hers would be boarding the train soon, and when he did, she told me his name was Ray. Ray was filled in about everything and agreed to escort me home, and she promised me that I could trust him. The two of them waited with me until I got to my stop. The man, still watching me, started to smile wildly, resembling the Cheshire Cat. He shouted, "This is your place, right?" To which I didn't respond and just gave the woman a hug and thanked her. Ray and I hurriedly hopped off the train. As I looked back, I saw that the woman had pulled out her pistol and told the man to sit back down, even blocking the exit with her body. And I finally let myself cry in relief. Ray walked me home and tried to calm me down by telling me about his job and his family. After watching me get inside the gates of my apartment safely, I thanked him profusely for his help. This happened like 2 years ago. It might not be that bad, but I still get nightmares about it. Also, English is not my native language, and this is my first time posting here, so please bear with me. I was in 8th grade that time, and I go to this big public school near my house. It was my first day and all, so the teacher assigned me to sit next to a boy who looked nice and outgoing. Let's call him Dan. So I took a seat there, and he was chatty, asking me about my name, age, and etc. He was really friendly and normal. After a few days of sitting next to him, I felt some bad vibes around him, but I never really gave it that much thought. But then after 2 months of sitting next to him, he was trying all sorts of things to get closer to me, and I was uncomfortable with his actions, but I didn't confront him. I know, I was naive and not good with confrontations. But John, my other guy friend, was assigned to sit next to us. Now I'm sitting in the middle of Dan and John. So John and Dan grew close, and I had no problems with that. Then John was going to eat lunch with us when he brought Dan with him. I was surprised that Dan was now tagging along with us, which he never did before. But I never paid attention to it. So Dan took a seat next to me. Not next to John, but to me. I was a little confused, but as a naive 14-year-old girl, I just brushed it off. But that's when things get a little creepy. He started moving closer to me, like he was trying to let our bodies touch. But I was a Catholic girl, and I was to stay my distance with boys. So I moved a little away from him now. But he didn't stop, then he kept going at it. That's when my friend told me that she needed assistance in the bathroom and that I should go with her. I frantically accepted it. It turns out, my friend noticed how creepy he was. But I still didn't do anything about it. I thought maybe he was just having a crush on me. So I kept my distance. And that's when he started to get really, really creepy. One day, I've gotten very sick and couldn't go to school, so I stayed home and just watched some TV and even checked my Facebook. And that's when I saw it. Dan has sent me a friend request, which I never accepted, and some message requests. I was curious, so I opened it, and there were hundreds of messages from him. He was asking why I was not at school and what happened to me. He was also getting mad and cursing at me. He also said that I was a bitch for ignoring his messages. All those 100 messages were sent the same day, and I felt sick to my stomach. I've never experienced this, but I didn't tell my parents because I was scared that they wouldn't allow me to go out with my friends anymore. I know, I was stupid. I'm sorry. And that night, I was still pretty shaken up from what he did when I received another new message from him, and that message still haunts me to this day. Hey, I hear you were sick. Sorry for getting mad at you. I just thought you were avoiding me. So, feel better and drink your medicine. I know you haven't eaten dinner yet, so please eat dinner so you can feel better. Then I can see you again at school. That sent chills all over my body because I haven't told anyone that I was sick, and my parents didn't tell anyone either, not even my own teacher. And the fact that he knew that I haven't eaten dinner yet was so weird because it was 11 p.m. and people usually eat at 8. I suddenly felt like I was being watched, so I closed my curtains. I still didn't tell my parents because I was making myself believe that maybe that it was just a coincidence. I got better and I was on my way to school. I didn't want to sit next to him anymore, but that wasn't an option because my teacher was pretty strict when it comes to sitting arrangements. I was walking to school when I see him walking behind me. A sick feeling came to my stomach again. I just fastened my pace and he did the same. I was so scared, but finally I reached the school entrance and ran. And I saw my friend and told her everything. She advised me to stay away from him, and I did. But that didn't stop him. That's when Valentine's Day arrived. Our school made a big deal about Valentine's Day, so they canceled all the classes, but still asked us to go to school and made us wear red clothes. I just wore black jeans and a red plain shirt with a black cardigan. Nothing really fancy, but then I get a message from him asking if he could take a picture of me and if he could print it so he could watch it while he falls asleep. He then sent it with a winky face. I didn't know what it meant, so I just ignored him again. But I saw him staring at me while touching his private part. I was so weirded out that I reported him to our teacher, but they didn't do anything. So my friends made sure that he stays away from me. When a guy gave me chocolates and flowers because they liked me, Dad threw angry glares at me, but I ignored him again. So when I was on my way to our classroom to get my bag, because I left it there, I saw Dan sitting there. His face was blank. We were both alone in the classroom because our classmates were busy at the gymnasium. I was so scared, but I took out a brave face and walked to my bag. He saw me and screamed, "You're a slut, like your mother. Why won't you like me back? God wants us to be together." I was so scared that I just froze out of my spot. He was looking at me, and I was feeling like I was going to die. But then he stormed off, and I was relieved. I left after that and cried in front of my friends. And that was the last straw because I told my parents and they reported him. But the school just said that they were going to talk to him, which they never did because he didn't show up at class the next day. We heard he quit school and was working at a small convenience store near school. But that's not the end, because he made a fake account with his name, but his picture was me. He sent me another message, a screenshot of his phone, and the wallpaper was me, But the picture that he sent me was not familiar with me. I never took that picture. It was shot from my window while I was sitting in my bed studying, and I had my earphones on. I was wearing a large shirt with no bra and just some shorts. He captioned it with "I hope to lay next to your bed." I was really freaked out that I cried. I told my mom about it and she told me to just block it because we were going to move out of that town in a few weeks. And so I did. But he couldn't take the message. A year after the incident, I was now in 9th grade, but we didn't move because there was a problem with the new house. That's when he created another fake account using my friend John's name and photo on it, and I accepted it because John was talking about creating a new Facebook profile a week ago, so I assumed that that was him. Now, Dan, who was pretending to be John, messaged me and said, "I just want to explain. I dropped out of school because of you. I told my parents that we broke up and that I can't stand seeing you. I'm also sorry for shouting at you that day, but I want us to be together, to have lovely sex and children. If you can't like me back, it's fine to me. Just please, just don't block me again because I think I will kill myself if you do that. Okay? I love you." I was confused at first because I thought John was messaging me. But then, it started to sink into me. This was Dan. I immediately got sick into my stomach that I vomited. I was so scared of what my next move should be because if I block him, he might actually kill himself based on his mental state. So instead of blocking him, I asked my parents to reach out to his parents, and they did. His parents were so embarrassed and they apologized to us, through text, of course. I heard he was now at a mental facility, getting the help that he needs. And me, well, we moved out, and I cut all my connections with Dan. I started a new life, and now I take caution to whom I should be friends to. So, to the guy who stalked me, let's not meet again. It's hard for me to write this because it has only been a year since it stopped. It started in 2014 and it happened in my home country of Sweden when I went to an art school for a summer course as a form of daily activity. The people at this art school were some of the worst people I have ever met, and that included me because I was kind of thrashed back then too. I was 21 years old and had little experience of the real world. I had gone 2 extra years of school because of switching majors and taking an extra year on my second choice, so I was literally on my first year of independence. I also have a light form of autism and didn't receive schooling until I was 12, which made me a bit more slowly developed mentally during high school. Don't worry, I'm all caught now. Basically, I was a 21-year-old with very little experience in life. The people I met at the art school were not, let's say, the highest of achievers. They were some of the meanest and most terrible people I have ever met. They treated each other and me awfully, as well as the teachers. But I was quite the little turd too. In fact, I feel like being around those people also made me worse. What started the stalking was an incident involving acrylic paint. It was going to be thrown away, so some of us took some of the paint so it wouldn't go to waste, and I finally took the remaining paint. Well, Itsover showed up. Her name was Anna, and this is how she introduced herself. My art teacher was pushing these big tables on a trolley through the narrow passageway of the art hall, and Anna, dressed in expensive designer clothes, stood in her way. So my art teacher, not fearing anything, screams, "Move it!" Anna steps towards her with this crazy look in her eyes and shouts, "Excuse me, do you know who I am? I'm a famous woman." My art teacher, not impressed, responds with, "Okay, famous woman, move it." That's how we learned of Anna, the famous artist. She then proceeded to have all the terrible people of my class smooch over her and treat her like a celebrity, but her real reason for being there was because of her paint. So the great hunt began. I was roped into it, and my initial plan was just to give her back her paint so she could be off. Except, during the hunt, I got these terrifying red flags. She kept sniffing the paint of other people to see if any were hers. Apparently, she poured some kind of oil into the paint so she could sniff her way to where they were. During the hunt, she admitted that she had been put into treatment for the criminally insane because she had stalked a previous schoolmate that she thought had stolen paint from her. She even showed a CCTV video of her old schoolmate pulling a suitcase behind her, saying that's where she had the paint that she stole. I asked her how she got the video, and she said that her dad had connections with the local government, which had gotten the video from one of the local government cameras, which is illegal for a layman to access too. During this time, she even showed me the court document which she had saved as a PDF on her phone. During this time, she also admitted that she had been sending messages to a famous artist because a voice from heaven told her to do it and that she was destined to help her with her career. Anna also thought that staring wide-eyed made her more attractive, like the kind of stare where you can't see any of her eyelids at all. So while she was saying all of this, she had this crazy-eyed look on her face. I was terrified of her. I couldn't figure out a way of handing back the paint, so she ended up threatening to have the principal fired if she couldn't search every room for the paint. And when she did find all of her paint, she put it in one of the school's rooms and said that she would pick it up when she wanted to. She said that she would come every year during the art exhibit to check if her paint was still there and that she would sue the school if she found it missing. What a crazy person. End of the story, right? How I wish. About 2 years later, I enrolled in a 1-year basic art program at that school. I had completely forgotten about this crazy person. At one point, we were cleaning out the art rooms and her paint was brought up again, and it would again be thrown away. Me, not remembering the crazy famous artist, took a nice crimson bottle for myself, while others took some of the not ruined color for themselves. Then, as we all tried to continue with our lives, the crazy lady one day returned and started sniffing all the color. I didn't recognize her at all and had forgotten how dangerously deranged she was. I had even forgotten that I had gotten the crimson color from her paint, so when she started interrogating me for why the paint smelled like hers, I didn't know what to say. She also smelled her paint at some other girl's table and was harassing her as well. Thinking that this was all more fuss than it was worth, I threw away the crimson paint. It had started to cut from age anyway. And that is when everything went to hell and crazy-eyed Anna became my stalker. When she found out that I had thrown away the paint, she became convinced that I had re-enrolled at the art school specifically to steal her paint. She started convincing a bunch of gullible and, to be honest, low-achieving people that this was true, and I started being harassed. It started with a physical attack. I was painting alone in the evening, minding my own business, when this huge brute ran into me, tackled me on the floor and hit and kicked me. While this was happening, crazy Anna was fake crying in the corner, but I could see on the floor how she went from fake crying into gleefully smiling as I was being kicked and hit. Another girl she had recruited picked up and smashed my phone, breaking it. As the guy stormed off and the second girl followed, I stumbled onto my feet and asked Anna why she had done this, and the answer she gave me made me realize what kind of person she was. "So you will know that I can hurt you if I want." That is the answer she gave me. I later asked the brute why he attacked me, and he said that he hated people who stole. This guy is training now to become an art teacher, and I fear for those children. I had bruised my ribs but were not allowed to go to the hospital because the principal didn't want to get involved, and since my phone was broken, I couldn't call for an ambulance. So it took so long to get to the hospital that the outside signs of the abuse had healed. During this time, crazy-eyed Anna started wearing a crimson jacket wherever she went. I asked her why she was wearing it and also said she looked pretty, thinking that talking nicely to her would start a friendly conversation to maybe smooth everything over. Well, Anna is not like normal people and does not think like normal people. Her response was that she wanted me to think of her every time I saw this color, and said that she had seen it work in a movie. She then added, "I am more beautiful than you will ever be." Wherever she went, she had a horde of smoochers around her, all thinking she was some kind of famous and fancy artist. But eventually, she had to leave the school, and I thought I had peace. Except she one day suddenly showed up and gleefully presented me with the school's Russian exchange student. This student had been sitting at my table every day for weeks, and I hadn't paid it any mind because why would I? She was allowed to sit there, but this is when crazy-eyed Anna drops the bombshell that this exchange student was A, not a real exchange student, and B, she had been putting her phone on the table each mealtime while having it on speaker with Anna on the other end, silently listening in on my conversations. I remember when she first told me this and how I didn't believe it. I didn't believe, and a part of me still had a hard time realizing the lengths this woman was going to were real. But it was what she said next that terrified me the most. She said, "I know about the secret messages behind your words, and I know what you're up to. And I had heard a voice from above that told me that it was my mission in life to keep an eye on you and to make sure that you behave." The abuse at school escalated quickly after this. I was harassed and cornered in every classroom and chased around school, and at the same time, I got no help. It escalated into a happening one late weekend night. I was sitting in the school's texture room when a guy suddenly burst in and started running towards me, screaming, "What makes you think you can sit here?" He did not go to this school. I jumped out of a window and started running towards my dorm and managed to call 112 in the meantime. That's the emergency number for Sweden. And managed to scream out that I needed help and where I was. I ran towards my dorm, but another guy was waiting for me there, so I ran towards the head building. But a third guy was waiting there. They cornered me, and I remember how scared I was. I thought I was going to die. But then, a light of hope. Blue and red lights from the road. I was saved. I remember how happy I was to see the police officer. Everything would finally be over. And then, he walked up to the girl who orchestrated all of it, Malin, and he greeted her like a friend. And I knew it in that moment that he wouldn't save me. I screamed for help and he ignored me. She told him that there was no issue here. He said he was looking forward to seeing her around town. Then he left. He left me. He just drove away. The last thing I remember is the backlights of that police car driving away. I wake up the next morning, laying on the ground with a huge bump on the side of my head. I don't know what happened. Malin claims they never touched me and I just passed out when one of the guys grabbed me. I know better. I know the pain I felt and the huge bump on the side of my head. I called 112 and I called for an ambulance. At this time, because of the abuse, I had memory loss and couldn't quite tell the lady what the issue was. But I made a mistake. I told her that I called 112 the day after and the police officer just left me. And she got mad. Really, really mad. She told me that I was slandering her coworker and to only call if I actually needed help. And then she hung up. I was alone again, with no one, not a single person on my side. I tried to make a police report against Anna and Malin, but the officer had heard about me and deleted my report. It was during this time that I had enough and thought about ending my own life, so I was forcefully put in a mental health ward. And the stalking didn't stop. Crazy-eyed Anna had a friend of hers be committed so she could come into the ward as a visitor in order to harass me. When I tried to go to art schools again, she had people she had threatened to join the same program so they could keep an eye on me. At home, she would have another guy she had threatened to park outside my house a few times a week in order to scare me. During this, she would also have things stolen from me. Things like shoes, gloves, and the like. And according to the people doing the stealing, this was because she had watched a movie where someone steals items and puts them back to make someone go insane from the harassment. Crazy-eyed Anna would call me a few times a year lying about being a data collector to get private information out of me, something that took a few years to even catch on to. Because she lived in a big city far away at that time, she constantly forced other people to do the stalking for her. Most of them had at one point given drugs to, and then would get them to do what she wanted by threatening to report them to the police if they wouldn't. Others, she just bribed with money or charmed. I have gone for hour-long bus rides where someone admits to being there for her sake. Most people are afraid of her because she wouldn't leave them alone, and she will do to them what she does for me if they don't say yes to her. One girl was roped into standing all dressed in red outside my supermarket. Another girl was also roped into sitting with her car outside my house for hours, a few days a week, all because of the fear of this woman. I learned from a cousin of hers that she affords all of this because she won an art prize for 500,000 SEK at one point. It's why she thinks she's famous. I also learned that most of her biological family has cut contact with her because she has been doing this since she was a teenager. And yet, even with that information, no one would listen. When I tell people what she had done to me, people call me the crazy one. I have no history of delusions or of making up tall tales, yet it was so much easier for people to just think that I'm crazy. I have even been forcefully medicated at some points with psychosis medication that baffled doctors lamented over not working. Not even my family believes me, something that has forever barred how much trust I can put into the relationship between us. I asked her once why she was doing all of this, and she said, "To punish you." I asked her for how long I would need to be punished, and she answered, "For as long as I want." At one point, I even considered killing her. I am the kind of person who catches flies alive in a cup and let them out the window. I have never harmed another human being, and I have never been violent. Yet at one point, I felt so desperate for freedom that I would take prison rather than being haunted by crazy-eyed Anna anymore. I was more afraid of her than of prison. Then, it stopped. It just stopped. Still a year later, I don't know why it stopped. Nothing in her history tells me that she would stop willingly, so I'm convinced that either she has run out of people to threaten into doing her bidding, or something has happened to her. It's possible that one of those people finally reported her and actually got taken seriously. I don't know. Even so, I can't feel relief. Not yet. And I am still afraid that it will start again, and I have given up all hope of being taken seriously by the police. So Anna, let's not meet again. So this girl that I was talking to at that time, her and I needed to have a talk. Yep, that one. And we decided that we would go to our local college town statue to do so. Many kids that go to our college went there to hang out, take pictures, climb on the statue, college kid shit. Basically, this statue was 30 minutes away in the middle of just farmland. The road to get there is a small, one-lane each direction road. I don't know the story behind it or anything, but it's a popular place and you would think that it's safe. So, we decided to head out, and it was probably around 1 a.m. at that point. You could see the stars and all of that. It was pitch black outside. When we got there, I get a really creepy feeling, but we wanted to take a look at the statue, so we got out of my car anyway and proceeded to walk to the statue. It was about a 5-minute walk from the gravel parking spot. We take a look and decided to get back in my car because it was dark and cold outside. This is when I decided to keep my engine running and back up into a spot so I could look at the small road to see if anything was happening. About 10 minutes into our conversation, I see a large white SUV drive past us. I didn't think anything of it, but it was the only other car we've seen all night. The car drives maybe a quarter mile down the road and suddenly does a 3-point turn. Weird. But no problem. He then comes back towards us and takes a right onto a side road that sat directly in front of us. At this point, I'm like, okay, he missed a turn, but no problem. About a quarter mile down this side road, the SUV does another 3-point turn and is now facing my car directly. The SUV stopped 100 feet or so in front of us with its headlights blaring down my car. Now, I was like, okay, this is super weird. I'm gonna get out of here. Suddenly, the car drives straight ahead into our gravel lot and sort of blocks off the only entrance or exit. The SUV then just sits here again, and we are directly facing each other. At this point, all of my spidey senses are in full gear and I'm ready to book it. The girl with me was like, no, we need to finish talking. He's just being weird. But I decide to just start hauling ass, and as soon as I squeeze my car out of the lot and onto the road, the SUV is tailing me. So I'm like, okay, this fucker obviously wants to do something with us. I told the girl to call the cops, but of course, in the middle of nowhere, there's no service. I start to fucking push my car and I'm going at 120 miles per hour on this small country road surrounded by nothing. And of course, the SUV is right on my ass. The road that we are on is straight nothingness for 15 plus miles, and so we continue driving. Once we finally started to reach a sense of civilization, there was an intersection with other cars. I finally get my sigh of relief and thought that this guy would leave us alone, so just try to test or trick him. I turn on my left turn signal and get ready to turn. I turn my wheel enough so that it would look like I was going to turn. Then I put my entire weight on my gas and went straight. He followed me exactly. with a turn signal, turning, accelerating, and everything. A couple of miles later, we finally get reception and call the police. As we are on the phone with them, there is a brightly lit gas station, one of those big ones like Quick Trip or Racetrack, and we turn into that because if this fucker is going to kill or kidnap us, he's going to have to do it where other people can see. And as soon as I turn into that gas station, he books it and hauls ass to wherever the fuck he was going. We gave a description and what happened to us to the dispatcher and continued on with our conversation. And to this day, I don't know what that person wanted or what their objective was, but I'm glad that I didn't find out. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. I would also like to thank my following patrons: Ralph, Jake, Fire05, Gabriel, Moschino, Lori, Eskimono, and Matt's Chats. Thank you very, very much. I really do appreciate it. If you want to support the channel further, you can be a patron too. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.